Vegan. I'm vegan.
And everything is vegetarian.
Yes. Wow, this is pretty dreamy. How easy is it actually to travel around Sweden as a vegan? In Stockholm, we found huge vegan buffets and some incredible plant-based food. But then we traveled almost 1,000 kilometers north into Swedish Lapland, where the choices became much more limited. So from Stockholm to Kiruna and remote Abisko, I'll show you what we ate, how I planned our food, and whether Sweden really is easy for vegan travelers. Now, before we get into the food, there is something you should know about the way I travel. I'm not only a vegan travel vlogger, I'm also a vegan travel curator, and I am a massive foodie. So food is never something I leave until we arrive at a destination. Before every trip, I research vegan and vegan-friendly restaurants using Happy Cow, Google Maps, menus and reviews, and I keep a list in my travel planning spreadsheet of the places where we actually want to eat. I then plan those restaurants alongside the attractions we are visiting because for me, discovering the local food scene is just as important as discovering the destination itself. So, there is actually very little chance of us arriving somewhere hungry and then starting to search for vegan food. Of course, plans sometimes change while traveling, but most of what you are going to see in this video was well researched before we even arrived in Sweden. Fotografiska is a perfect example. We already wanted to visit the photography museum, and during my research, I had discovered that their restaurant had vegan options. So, instead of visiting the museum and then traveling somewhere else looking for dinner, I could combine both into the same evening. Unfortunately, this vegan travel vlogger committed the ultimate crime and forgot to properly film the food before eating it. Please forgive me. But we definitely weren't disappointed, and this is exactly why I like integrating food into the itinerary rather than treating it as an afterthought. The next morning started aboard our floating hotel, Mela Drottningen. Our mornings are usually quite simple. We start with soaked nuts that we usually carry, followed by plenty of fresh fruit, and there were enough simple plant-based choices here for the breakfast, including the fruits. We also knew we had a very busy day exploring Stockholm as we had 2 walking tours back to back. So we spoke to the reception and asked whether it was okay to make a few sandwiches from breakfast to carry with us. They were absolutely fine with it. And that is something I'd recommend. If you want to take something from a hotel breakfast, always ask first. Every hotel's policy is different. So with a little food safely packed for later, we could head out and enjoy Stockholm without worrying about getting hungry between stops. But packed sandwiches certainly weren't going to stop us from exploring Stockholm's vegan food scene. Lunch was already planned at Hermitage Vegetarisk, right in Gamla Stan, a vegetarian restaurant with a buffet, where during our visit almost everything we saw was vegan. They'll give a plate, we'll fill food and then visit. Like that. Yeah. First be in the queue.
Or is everything over there vegan or is it vegetarian?
Everything is vegan today except the lasagna.
Thank you. You can
And then you have the water right there.
Alright, thank you. And this is my kind of sightseeing break. There were soups, curries, salads, rice, breads, vegetables, and so many different dishes that suddenly the problem wasn't finding something vegan, it was deciding what to eat first. It was hearty, filling, really satisfying after walking around Gamla Stan, and because I had already built it into our itinerary, we didn't have to go out of our way looking for lunch. Sightseeing and food planning working together, that's exactly how I like to travel. And dinner was another place that was already very high on my Sweden food list. Hermans. This one is completely vegan, which means no checking ingredients, no looking for little vegan symbols, and no asking which dishes contain dairy. You can eat everything. And just look at this buffet. Salads, vegetables, breads, dips, hot dishes. There was so much variety that deciding where to start became the real challenge. And this is also the kind of restaurant I'd happily recommend to someone who isn't vegan. Nothing about the experience feels like you're compromising or eating a substitute for something else. It's simply really good food that happens to be vegan. This is why Food gets such a big place in my itineraries. For me, experiencing a destination includes experiencing what you can eat there, and Stockholm was making that extremely easy. But Stockholm is a major European capital. I expected the vegan food scene to be good. The more interesting question was what would happen when our itinerary took us almost 1,000 kilometers north. So we left Stockholm behind and flew to Kiruna in Swedish Lapland. And because I knew we had have limited time in Kiruna before our train to Abisko, I had already researched where we could eat. Arctic Thai and Grill was on my list thanks to Happy Cow because it had vegan friendly options and worked perfectly with our route to the railway station. Once again, I somehow ate before properly filming the food. I promise I'll get better at this. But we had a seriously filling late lunch there, and it kept us going for the rest of the day. This is where researching beforehand becomes even more useful. The fewer options a destination has, the less I want to leave food to chance. And from Kiruna, we travel even further into Swedish Lapland to Abisko. Once you are somewhere this remote, you're obviously not choosing between dozens of vegan restaurants anymore. So here, my planning changes. Instead of focusing on restaurants, I start looking much more carefully at the accommodation, nearby shops, and what food we can arrange in advance. And STF Abisko tourist station was a really nice surprise.
Mayo jalapeno.
Great to see Oatly has reached Abisko
And
in Sweden.
also oddly good.
Yeah.
Both of these are vegan.
So yeah, vegan food can be anywhere, guys. High time. No excuse. We had communicated our vegan requirements and they had vegan cheese, vegan butter and plant milk available for us at breakfast. When you're in Stockholm, something like vegan cheese at breakfast might not feel particularly remarkable, but beside a national park in Swedish Lapland, it makes a huge difference. And this is probably one of my biggest tips if you're traveling vegan somewhere remote. Communicate before you arrive. Tell your accommodation you're vegan. Ask what they normally provide, whether they can arrange anything, and what other food options are available nearby. I research restaurants very thoroughly, but vegan travel planning isn't just about restaurants. Sometimes the most important meal planning happens with your accommodation. And here in Abisko, that little bit of preparation made things incredibly easy. The next day we were hiking part of Kungsleden, the legendary King's Trail. So obviously this wasn't a day to depend on finding food along the way. Again, we checked with the accommodation first whether it was okay for us to prepare some sandwiches from breakfast to carry for lunch. Once they confirmed it was fine, we packed our sandwiches and some simple food for the trail. Richie's enjoying his picnic sandwich. What do you have inside it?
I have vegan cheese, vegan butter, gluten-free bread, asado maybe, and some tomatoes and lettuce and kheera, what do you call it?
Cucumber.
Cucumber.
You call it maybe gurke in here. Something like that. And this is another side of vegan travel that doesn't always make it onto Instagram. Not every meal needs to be an incredible vegan restaurant. Sometimes the smartest meal is simply the one you have planned and packed beforehand, because then you are free to spend the day doing this. So after traveling from Stockholm all the way into Swedish Lapland, is Sweden easy for vegans?
Let's do this.
Stockholm? Absolutely. Dedicated vegan restaurants, huge buffets and plenty of plant-based choices. Kiruna had fewer options, but because we had researched beforehand, it really wasn't difficult. And Abisko required more preparation, but communicating with our accommodation and planning our hiking food meant being vegan never became an obstacle. And I think that's the important distinction. Traveling vegan doesn't mean you'll find 10 vegan restaurants everywhere you go. It means doing enough research and planning that food doesn't prevent you from experiencing the destination. Being vegan has never stopped me from putting somewhere on my travel list, and I don't want it to stop you either. So, quick favorites. Hermans for our favorite vegan experience. Hermitage for that incredible buffet. STF Abisko for the biggest surprise. And Happy Cow remains one of my most used tools when researching vegan travel. And this is exactly why food is such a big part of both my travels and the itineraries I curate. I'm a foodie first. And genuinely, I believe that discovering what people eat is part of discovering a destination. So subscribe to Travel with Shreya for more vegan travel guides like this. And if you want me to do all that research and planning for you, come travel with us at Ubuntu Vegan Travel. I'll see you in the next adventure. Popcorn kha, thank you, namaskar.